everyone, welcome to the Women of War podcast, where we dive into the untold stories of women's bravery, struggles, and resilience in the midst of conflict. I'm your host Megan, and together we'll explore the powerful narratives of women who've stood on the front lines, those who've been caught in the crossfires, and the lasting impact war has had on their lives. From ancient warriors to modern day heroes, we'll uncover the roles women have played in shaping history throughout war and peace. So grab your headphones and let's embark on this journey to hear the voices of women who've fought battles both seen and unseen. Get ready for an eye-opening experience on the Women of War podcast. Today's episode is a journey back in time to ancient Rome, where gods and goddesses reign supreme. The lady we will be talking about today is not a well-known goddess to us today, but back in her time, Bellona was a revered goddess of war. So, grab your virtual swords and shields as we go on a journey through time to uncover the hidden tales of this Roman goddess. Let's get into the details. Bellona was a revered deity in ancient Roman religion, embodying the aspects of warfare. She was often depicted wearing a military helmet, symbolizing her governing nature, and was frequently portrayed holding weapons such as a sword, spear, or shield. Additionally, she was associated with the imagery of riding into battle in a chariot drawn by 4 horses, sometimes wielding a torch or whip. Throughout the Roman Empire, numerous temples were dedicated to her worship. Notably, her sanctuary, stated outside the city of Rome, served as the central location for official declaration of war. Bellona's representation was characterized by her passionate and wild demeanor in combat. Her visual portrayal experienced rebirth during the Renaissance as artists and sculptors drew inspiration from her. Bellona's name has a pretty cool backstory. It involved from the older name Doluna, which is linked to the old Latin word dolum, meaning war. That word eventually changed to bellum in classical Latin, which is the word for war we're more familiar with. Now, the roots of dolum is a bit confusing, but the linguist Georgian Pinot threw out the idea that it might come from donulo, which is like a similar, more specific version of donos. That's an old school term that's kind of like an early version of bonus, meaning good. And then there's Michael Divan, another language expert, who thinks that Bellona was used in a war context to mean something like action of valor or just plain war. So, in a twist, Bellona might have started as a way to talk about bravery and ended up as a word for war. Wild, isn't it? We're going to explore a bit of Rome's beliefs. Ancient Roman military cults has a rich belief in ritual that backed the might of Rome. Upon reflection, it's become evident that these cults were not merely about war, but also about the values and virtues that Romans held dear. The cult of Mars, the god of war, was central to Roman society. Mars was more than a deity of conflict. He represented the embodiment of Roman strength and virtuality. His festives were as the Feri Marti in March, celebrated on the onset of the campaigning season, and soldiers would pray to him for valor and victory. The cult of Virtus, the personification of bravery and military strength, was also revered, especially by soldiers seeking to embody these qualities. Virtus was often associated with Honos, the god of honor, and their joint temple was a testament to the Roman commitment to courage and integrity and on and off the battlefield. Another fascinating aspect of the cults of the standards was the legendary eagles and other military insignia. These symbols were not mere tools for the organization, but held deep spiritual significance. The loss of a standard was a grave misfortune, while its recovery was a cause for celebration and thanksgiving to the gods. The imperial cult, too, played a role in the military sphere. The emperors often died after their deaths. Soldiers swore oaths to the genius or guiding spirit of the emperor, binding them to the state and the divine ruler. These cults were integral to the Roman military's identity, providing a sacred framework that gave context to their earthly struggles and bound them to their eternal city. We're going to talk more about Bellona and her background and both mythology and the arts. Bellona was a formidable deity whose origin can be traced back to Sabines, an ancient people of the Italian peninsula. The Romans recognized her governing prowess, assimilating her into their pantheons, often associating her with Mars, their own god of war. The fusion of Bellona with Enyo and the Greek goddess of war and destruction perhaps stemmed from their shared attributes of ferocity and battle frenzy. In the year 296 BCE, during a period of strife against the Etruscans and Samnites, a temple was dedicated to Bellona within the vicinity of the Circus Flammis. This initiative was spearheaded by Appius Claudius Caesius, who saw the temple as a means to venerate his family's achievements as well as honor the goddess herself. The annual festivities in Bellona's honor took place on June 3rd, with her priest, the Bellonlori, engaging in self-lacerations as a form of divination, this ritual occurring on March 24th, known as the Day of Blood, bears resemblance to the fervent rites dedicated to Cybele in Asia Minor. Such intense practices may have contributed to the fusion of beliefs between Bellona, Enyo, and Ma, a goddess from Cappadocia. Bellona's temple was strategically stationed in the Campus Martis, a neutral area designated for foreign envoys who were not permitted within Rome's sacred boundary. It was here that the Senate would convey with foreign dignitaries and celebrate military commanders before their triumphal procession. Adjacent to the temple stood the column Bellica, a war column from which a sphere would be cast to symbolize the commitment of hostilities in a ritual first recorded against Paris in 280 BC. The presence of Bellona's temple and the Columna Bellica is a Campus Martis underscored the intricate relationship between religion, diplomatic matters, and military traditions in ancient Rome. In my beliefs of the poetic landscape, I find Bellona's metaphors quite profound. Within statuses, the bold, the transitions and transcends her into her mythology, combines her wielding a spear and torch, riding her chariot, and brandishing a sword stained with the blood of the conflict. Shakespeare's work, too, bathed her in her essence in Henry V. She is the fiery-eyed maiden of smoky war, embodying the stormy spirit of battle. Macbeth elevates the formal character to a divine consort, a match for Bellona herself, mirroring the might of Mars. As we travel to the 19th century, Adam Lindsay Gordon's Bellona reveals her as a seductress, drawing men towards war. Arthur Graham West's The Traveler contrasts the companions of art, Pan, and Pater with the solitary embrace of Bellona amid the clamor of World War I. In the realm of harmony, Bellona graces Ramius, Les Indius, Galatis, where love's alluring triumphs over the drums of war. Bach made a song about Bellona as well. And it's composed for a royal occasion, resonates with the echoes of her domain, albeit in a celebratory tone. In a more contemporary depiction of is Brimidi's fresco in the U.S. Capitol, modernizing Bellona by placing her beside the artillery piece with the American flag emblazoned on her shield. Interestingly, not all image of Bellona features her in armor. For instance, the sculpture by Talteria in St. Petersburg and Pojos at J. Paul Getty's museum presents a less armored portrayal, aligning with a more classical text that describes her with exposed skin, resonating with her fierce nature. The artistic narrative also extends to poetic interpretations, as seen in Louis Francesco's Londrini's painting, which draws from Claudian's in Ruffinum, where Bellona is asked to bring Mars his helmet, further cementing her role as a divine bringer of war. Rodin's 1879 sculpture depicting the head of Bellona was intentionally conceived for a monument celebrating the French Third Republic. The sculpture excludes a sense of aggression, a testament to Rodin's skillful interpretation of the war goddess's demeanor. He modeled this piece on his mistress, Rose Bernard, capturing her in a moment of irate pride, with a head reared back and eyes casting along her right shoulder's axis. This portrayal of Bellona aligns with the broader thematic use of the goddess as a symbol of governing defense. Historically, Bellona's illustrations has been a fixture of various architectural celebration of war, involving to include remembrance of the fallen. A century after the 7-Year War, a monument in Quebec was dedicated to the French-Canadian casualties. Here, Bellona stands atop a column at the battlefield site, holding a shield and laurel crown symbolizing victory and remembrance. Disclaimer: I'm sorry if I mispronounced any words throughout this podcast. I'm not a linguist, but a historian. I'll be working on a pronunciation of my words, but until then, I hope you find the content relatable and interesting. I wanted to take this opportunity to wish my brother a very happy 29th birthday. So, I want to know about your thoughts. What do you think about Bellona? I definitely feel like she is someone that we could actually still see used in art today. I know that Rick Riordan has written about her in some of his books, which has been within the last 10 years. So, I want to definitely see what y'all think. Could Bellona be put back into art today, displayed in more state capitals? And I also wanted to talk about that Bellona was actually, in some of the mythology, was talked about to be a mother and sometimes the wife of Mars or the sister of Mars. So that also kind of linked her to war in a different aspect, in more of a mother or sister role, which I think kind of brings a slightly different perspective to her. To think of her as a mother, but also a goddess of war. She brings war, but yet she's also a mother. And with that means there's tenderness. And I think as a mother in war, you don't want, your sons or daughters to die in war, but you want victory. And so I think that kind of helps soften slightly the whole viewpoint of her being the goddess of war. She's fierce, but also there is a slight gentleness to her. So, please like, subscribe, comment, all those things. This is Megan with the Women of War podcast. Until next time, see you later.